If you're a 2D animator, whether you're at the beginner or intermediate level, and you've been thinking about starting character animation, or you've been wondering how you can improve on your character animation skills, in this video, I'm going to give you guys some practical tips and advice and practices that you can do to help you start making full figure character animation using Simple Anatomy. So if you want to make animations like the one playing in the background right now, and take it from this to this, then stick around until the end of the video. Now the focus of this video is animating a full body figure that has a solid foundation and looks believable as a 3D drawing in a 2D space. This is not a video for character acting, which is a more advanced animation philosophy that I won't be getting into for this video. This is mainly for people who struggle with drawing proper anatomy for their animated projects and don't know how to improve. Now for a little disclaimer, the process that I use in this video is one that works best for me and how I approach full figure animation. So it may not work for everyone, but the tips and practices I will give you all in this video will be useful for building up your anatomy knowledge. I'm going to cover 4 different categories, and each category builds upon the last. First, I will talk about gesture drawing, then one of the drawing fundamentals, which is construction or form, whichever you prefer. Then we'll move on to anatomy studies, and finally I will show you how practicing these 3 categories can be used with the last category, which is application to your actual animations. Now let's get started. If you've ever looked up ways to study anatomy or ways to improve your anatomy knowledge and skills, then 9 times out of 10 you've heard of the phrase gesture drawing a million times. Now for me personally, when I saw videos on how to do gesture drawing, I thought to myself that there's a quote-unquote correct way to do gesture drawing studies, and it would usually be those very fluid gestures with the long flowing pencil strokes that look like the artist just did it first try with no struggle. So that's how I thought I had to be when it came to doing gesture drawing studies. And by having that mindset, I started hating doing gesture drawings because my gestures came nowhere close to the ones I was using as a baseline of how gesture drawing should be done. So I'm here to tell you all today that in my personal opinion, gesture drawings can look however you like as long as the basic gesture and form of the subject is readable and understandable. You can take the gestures I'm doing right now as an example. They may not all be as clean as some other artists' gesture drawings, but the energy and the basic structure of the pose is readable and you understand what the character is doing in the moment. Another thing about gesture drawing practice is it's supposed to be a fun exercise to help train your observational skills as an artist. So when you sit down and have your references prepared for gesture practice, just take a deep breath and maybe put on some music or have a movie or show playing in the background. Whatever you need to do to get as relaxed as possible and just start sketching. The beautiful thing about gesture drawings is they don't have to be perfect. So this is your time to just relax and do some very low risk drawing and enjoy the process. And the more you do it, the easier it will be later down the line to draw poses with fluidity and energy, as well as poses that feel more solid instead of looking like a flat 2D image. Gesture drawing is probably the most relaxing form of full figure studying out of all the categories I'm going to list out today, so do try to have fun with it. And for those of you who would like that extra bit of challenge to see just how well you can draw full body figures that look 3-dimensional, but also fluid quickly and efficiently, you can set a timer for yourselves to complete a single drawing before having to move on to the next gesture, and see how long it takes for you to complete the gesture of a single pose, but that's mainly for anyone that feels up to doing that challenge. Now after you become more comfortable with gesture drawing, it's time to move on to construction, which can also be called form, which is one of the 7 art fundamentals for any of you beginner artists out there that didn't already know. To best understand the concept of form for figures, you don't think of it as bones or muscles on the bodies just yet, but as simple geometric shapes, and I'll show you what I mean. My shorthand for creating the human figure is essentially using spheres, cubes, and cylinders. I use a sphere for the head and shoulders, cylinders for the arms and legs and neck, cubes for the base of the hands and feet, and so on. You get the idea. Using this method really helps simplify the figure so that you can essentially draw the body from any angle quickly, which is essential for 2D animation. Now it may seem a little counterintuitive to have a rigid structure formed from geometric shapes after learning gesture drawings, but a mistake that some beginner artists can make, and a mistake I used to make, is treating the simple shapes as static forms. Instead, what I would suggest is think of each of these shapes like they're balloons filled with water. They still maintain their initial shape, but can bend and shift to add more believability and energy to the figure instead of looking like a stiff action figure whose joints can only move in a limited, rigid way. Once you understand that, you can really push the limits of your solid figures and exaggerate them in unique ways and even foreshorten them to make the drawing more dynamic. So now you've done your gesture drawings, and now you know how to add form to them and to make them three-dimensional. Now it's time to finally place the proper anatomy onto your figures to bring your drawings closer to being finished. Now for this part especially, you're going to need to get your hands on some good and correct anatomy reference for the style that you're going for. And I say the style because there are many ways to draw anatomy. There's realistic anatomy, there's anime-like anatomy, and there's stylized anatomy. I recommend starting with regular baseline human anatomy. That way you know how a normal body should look and behave, and from there you can begin to take liberties with your own anatomy designs and create visually unique characters. Once you have your references ready, then take the poses that you have already gone through, the gesture and construction stages, and start to add in the correct anatomy to the figure. Now you don't always have to do the full body poses to practice anatomy. Most artists isolate certain areas of the body like the head, torso, and hands and solely focus on studying those specific anatomy structures until they have a good enough understanding of it so they can move on to the next. But it's still important, even if you do isolated studies, to draw the full figure and how each bone and muscle connects to one another. Once you have the basics of anatomy down, you can then use that knowledge to create any body shape that you want and have a lot more freedom in your designs and your animations. Now this is the final step in the process of drawing simple anatomy for animation, and that is actually applying everything I've talked about previously into animation. Now for studying purposes, I recommend finding a simple video reference to animate from, then step by step animate the gesture of the figure, and once the animation is at a point that you like, then just like before, start adding on layer after layer of construction and anatomy until the end you have your completed full figure animation, and from there you can add in essentially whatever you want. From clothes to special effects to character expressions, whatever you want to do. So here's the final product of following those 4 steps for simple anatomy. Now the more you practice and the more you learn about the human figure and how it moves and behaves, you'll be able to start combining these steps together to make the process of animation faster, like using the 3D shapes while creating the gesture to make a solid form figure that isn't rigid or stiff, and that will help with creating more believable and captivating animation. Also, these steps don't only apply to animation, but can be used when drawing any artwork where you need to have knowledge of the human anatomy. But that's going to do it for this video, and I hope it helps someone out there on their journey to learning anatomy for animation. If you have any other tips or exercises that help you when drawing anatomy or full figure animation, then please leave them in the comments down below to continue to help fellow artists learn and grow, and I will see you all in the next one.